Welcome to The Explainer. For 40 years, China's economic growth felt like an unstoppable force of nature, a true miracle. But lately, as this slide suggests, that engine seems to be sputtering, doesn't it? So today, we're going to dig into why the world's most impressive growth story is suddenly facing a dramatic and really uncertain future.
All right, to really get this, you have to look at a place like Shenzhen. Picture this. In 1980, it was basically just a sleepy fishing village. And today, it's this sprawling, futuristic megacity, a powerhouse of global manufacturing. This one city is the perfect poster child for just how insane China's transformation has been.
But this story isn't just about shiny new buildings. The real miracle here, it was about people. Just look at this number. 800 million. That's how many people were pulled out of poverty in just 4 decades. Think about that for a second. It's one of the greatest and fastest poverty reductions in all of human history.
Okay, so fast forward to right now, and the headlines are telling a totally different story. All you hear about is this worsening property slump, people just not spending money, credit drying up, and youth unemployment getting so bad that for a little while, the government literally stopped reporting the numbers. The alarm bells are blaring.
So what happened? How did the engine of global growth start to sputter like this? Well, to figure out where China is heading, we've got to look past the simple story. We need to understand the real mechanics behind its incredible rise.
And this really brings us to the central paradox of China today, right? How can the country behind the greatest growth story in modern history suddenly seem to be in such deep trouble? How can both of those things be true at once? Let's unpack.
The standard story you hear all the time is, well, China just ditched communism for capitalism, right? They just opened up. But honestly, that's way too simple. Think about it. Other countries, like Russia, also abandoned communism, and they didn't see this kind of boom. So clearly there was something else going on.
The reality is, China wasn't just opening up and hoping for the best. It was following a very specific playbook, a development model that had been used before by other East Asian success stories like Japan and South Korea. And get this, even the United States used a version of it in its early days. So, what is this model? Well, economists call it the investment-driven growth model. At its heart, it's a strategy where the government jumps into the driver's seat and just pours money into building the foundations of a modern economy, and fast. The whole thing was built on 3 key pillars, each designed to solve a huge problem that any developing nation faces.
So let's break down these 3 pillars. First, massive, and I mean massive investment in infrastructure. Second, total state control of the financial system to funnel cheap money wherever they wanted. And third, protecting your brand new infant industries from foreign competition until they could stand on their own.
Now, that second pillar, controlling the finances, was absolutely crucial. The government basically told its state-owned banks, give cheap loans to factories and for construction. At the very same time, systems like the hukou registration system kept worker wages really low. You put those 2 things together, boom. It becomes insanely profitable to build stuff in China. And that's how it became the world's factory.
And this slide is a perfect example of that third pillar, protectionism. Just take cars. For years, China slapped huge tariffs on imported cars. That gave their own car makers a protected space to grow up and get competitive without being crushed. And even today, a European company pays a way higher tariff to sell a car in China than a Chinese company pays to sell one in Europe.
Now look, this model was unbelievably successful for decades. It really was. But here's the catch. It always had an expiration date. Eventually, the very things that powered the miracle, all that investment and those suppressed wages, started to become the problem itself.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The warning signs were clear, even to China's own leaders. Way back in 2007, Premier Wen Jiabao stood up and said, pretty publicly, that the country's growth model was becoming unsustainable. They knew the engine was overheating. So, what was the fundamental flaw here? Well, put simply, the model was designed to maximize production, not consumption. By keeping wages low to pump up investment, it created an economy where regular people couldn't actually afford to buy all the stuff its super-efficient factories were churning out. This has led to a huge economy-wide problem known as malinvestment. It's a fancy word for a simple idea. You just keep investing in things that nobody actually wants or needs, simply because the system is programmed to build. The result is just staggering waste and mountains of bad debt. And the crazy thing is, you can see this waste everywhere. It's not some abstract number on a spreadsheet. We're talking about vast, empty ghost cities with enough housing for an estimated 3 billion people.
We're seeing literal mountains of unsold electric cars and oceans of discarded share bikes. The overproduction is tangible.
So, all of this brings China to a critical crossroads. The old model is broken. The path forward is a choice between stagnation, collapse, or trying to find a completely new way to grow. Its future is really in limbo.
And here we get to the central challenge, the real reason this is so hard to fix. The economic solution is pretty obvious. You need to shift wealth to households and boost consumption. But that creates a huge political problem, because empowering consumers means the Communist Party has to give up some of its direct control over the economy, and that seems to be the one thing it's unwilling to do.
When we look at history, economies stuck in this position tend to follow one of two paths. You have the 1930s US model, where a financial bubble pops and you get a sharp, painful collapse and a deep depression. Or you have the 1990s Japan model, which saw decades of low growth and economic stagnation.
So which path is China on? Well, most experts argue it's looking a lot more like the Japan scenario. Why? Because China's financial system is state-controlled. The government simply will not let its major banks fail the way American banks did. This prevents a sudden collapse, but it comes at a huge cost, a long, slow grind of low growth, what many call the lost decades.
And this all leads us to one fundamental question. Can a true global superpower be built on a foundation of empty cities and unwanted goods? The answer won't just define China's future, it's going to shape the future of the entire global economy.